So compliments to Junior for this. He sent out some data. I ground around on it. This was strip intercropping data. And Junior, feel free to jump in if I'm all wrong. But the beauty of this is he had a number of different varieties. You guys can see you're seeing my spreadsheet, right, Lauren?
Yep.
Okay. And he had two different populations that he ran in the field. And Junior did something that I thought I was the only one willing to do in the world, and that is he harvested the outside rows individually. So he's got really high yields here in the outside rows, row 1 and row 8 on either side of the strip. And then row 2 and 7, somewhat less, a lot less actually, but still usually way better than the center rows. So and then he did it with two different population settings. So this kind of data was just really useful, and I'm highly complimentary of Junior for sharing it. So that's one, and now I'm going to go to another one.
Might want to kill your video, Bob.
Kill my video. Okay. All right.
There you go.
Now, let me go. I got Excel window. Generic. This is probably my proudest graphic for the year, even though it doesn't tell you a lot. One of the reasons it doesn't tell you a lot is it came from an undisclosed location, and I can't be sharing it, but I am because I'm really naughty. But it's coded. So there were a number of varieties that were tested. I'm not going to talk about brands or variety numbers, but I sorted the results from the varieties according to who did the best in 30-inch rows. And then I took the same data of the same population, and my understanding is this was a fairly comprehensive plot that had side-by-side 30 and 60-inch. So then there's yield for 60-inch rows. And the color coding here is what the real value of this graphic is, and the message of what I hope we can make one of our first major initiatives. Like the blue guy here is the same variety as the blue guy up here. So this particular variety did not do well in 60-inch corn by a wide margin, 180 versus 240 bushels, if you will, or 200 and yeah. So there's 60 bushels of spread there. Terrible. But it did pretty good in 30-inch rows. And then you go over here to the orange guy. It did not do well in 30s, but it did very well in 60s. So the conclusion for me on this deal is variety matters. Now, you guys are all really smart, and you've already figured out that this color right here is the same variety, and it did good in 30s and it did good in 60s. So that clearly is the one to plant. But I don't even know that I could tell you the truth on what it is, because I'm so embarrassed that I'm sharing this data. But my goal for us is to create databases like this with results that you all have generated on your farm, and I'll be doing a little on with the limited resources I have. But ultimately, I want to pressure the seed companies to be more forthcoming. I'm told by folks that a lot of seed companies are doing this work, they just aren't sharing it. So if I go back to Excel here, just a minute, I want to go to one more window. And this is what I call the green light list. And based on what I've seen, these are varieties that where the 60-inch beat the 30-inch, beat it, not equal it, beat it by 5% or more, as best I could tell. Now, some of them, this particular one here, I have some data with it and looked pretty interesting. And the 60 did beat the 30 by a little bit. This came out of Zach's information that he did. And the point here, this is out of Junior's plot. I took the edge performance of a row in Junior's plot and said that's a good indicator of how it will work in a 60-inch row. Now, in strip intercropping, usually it's like 30 inches on one side, but 15 feet on the other side. So you could challenge that assumption, but I'm just sharing what Junior shared and the work that he did, which is outstanding, because I think it does relate. And Leroy probably has some more opinions on that. And then I was sharing the previous graphic with the colored bars at a meeting I was at in Lincoln, I believe. Yeah, it was in Lincoln. And the tall Amish guy named Jesse Holstetter said, yeah. I said, I don't know if this is true or not, but Jesse stood up, calm voice, and said, yep, that's real, and we have experienced that with our varieties also. Prairie is a non-GMO small seed company out of Central Illinois. I've heard two other ones, Viking and Albert Lee, mentioned today. I don't know whether they have information or whatever, but the point here is this is a list of 10 different varieties from 4 different companies, 5 maybe, and that's out of a population where I've scrounged up data from my work and what others have done, what Junior's done, what Zach's done. So out of 50 varieties, these 10 are the ones that are most likely to be successful for you all. And so I'm not, this is like, don't do what Bob says because it's probably going to get you in trouble. Lauren could testify to that. But on the other hand, it really screams of, if you just randomly pick a seed that your seed dealer says is working and that'll work and whatnot, then you've got about a 60% chance of failing it in 60-inch rows versus the 30s. So the roll of the dice says in 10 times out of 50 you'll get a variety that does better. So let's figure out what we can do now. And some of the folks I've talked to people aren't real clear why a particular variety does better than others. And I know Leroy, visited with him yesterday. He's got some pretty strong interest in doing some research if he can corner the right seed company and have access to some of their talent. But generally, people said it's not just whether it's tall or short. It's not just whether it's determinate or flex. It's not just whether it's early or late. And I'm probably, I sound like I'm all about the corn here. The last couple of years, I've really kind of been about the cover crop. But as I try to figure out how I can make the best use of the number of seasons I have left ahead of me, I'd really like to get this to be more mainstream. And I acknowledge that it's not going to be mainstream until it works for more people, and then the seed companies start to acknowledge it. Now, Precision Planting at their PTI farms, I know, are doing some wide row corn. I don't think they're reporting results yet. So, questions, discussion?
You're certainly on the right track when you try to identify the hybrids for this system. It's certainly hybrid specific. And when I released the data I did, it said everything was released by hybrid. And I think there are two functions in the plant that would identify which hybrids will end up this way, but it takes some time to discover that. And I think you have the capability in this system, in your community, and the people you have here, to run those variety trials. And I would say I would like to see the variety trials summarized across a specific latitude range, because the latitude, of course, does change the treatment we get from the extra sunlight. I'm sorry to go on. You should never ask me a question, because it takes me a while to answer.
That's fine, Leroy. You've done well. Anyone else comment on this, Zach or Junior? Did I misrepresent your data?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's not, there's no university statistics behind it. You know, the numbers that I got were, you know, I just measured off, 17.5 feet and collected the ears and then shelled them with my kids in the shop, and then weighed them up. But so it's not like I took a very long test strip, but I tried to collect those numbers where it was consistent in the field. So try to take out some of the variabilities, but it's kind of in a low-lying area. I wish I would have done the same exact thing further up the hill, where it would have represented more of a dryland scenario. I think you could have taken these same numbers and maybe even flipped them around, just being in a completely different environment. But it was already a lot of data inputs to to collect, so I was kind of strapped for what I did already.
I can testify to that. What was the reaction of your conversations with any of your seed dealer types? What are they telling you? Or I presume you've shared this with them.
That's about as far as it went.
they showed
they could care less.
Yeah, and
it was really disappointing, really, because I thought that'd be really, especially not so much their reps, but maybe their agronomists, thinking they would find something intriguing about it, but that's about as far as it went. So it just tells you, I mean, if a guy's going to try something different, no matter what it is, I think a guy needs to do his own tests on the hybrids that he's going to use, because it's like you said, you use a hybrid and it doesn't work, you can't discredit the practice. It's, if you didn't try 10, 20 different hybrids, you don't know that it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. And people are busy. They got to make money. They don't have time to screw around with it. So,
Yep.
yeah. The term I use for that, Junior, is an amazing lack of curiosity.
Yeah.
Could I ask on a clarification, Junior?
Yep.
Good to hear from you, Junior. Is this stripped with 8 rows of soybeans?
Yes, 8 rows of corn, 8 rows of soybeans.
Okay.
Each hybrid was planted at a flat population of 28,000 through the field. And then I turned around and bumped the outside rows up to 40,000, but left all the middle rows, so 2 through 7, at 28,000.
Okay.
And I just wanted to see if, with the edge row effect, will a hybrid throw multiple ears and give an increased yield, or do we have to plant thicker? Because the idea was in wide row corn, you have to plant thicker to get your population up there. But my thoughts were, well, if we can find a hybrid that doesn't do that, we can save ourselves also on the seed expense, because you have additional cost of planting thicker on that outside row.
Okay, if you know, if you want to hear a little bit of my observation on the varieties in the 60s, I accidentally, seems like just from observation, discovered a number with a really erect leaf, strong leaf pattern, where I get equal or better yields in the 60s. It was more that obviously you need the consistent ear, you know, in row, but it was so aggressive with its leaf pattern. It actually was more competitive with the cover crop. We actually had less biomass with this hybrid than other hybrids, but it was very competitive in yield to the 30s.
Was that an Albert Lee?
Yes, that was their 108-day hybrid. It was untreated conventional seed. 4808. And I have pictures of it I could throw up at some point. When it it was probably end of July. The leaves in 60s were almost touching between the rows.
What was your population on that?
That would have been 28 infield, 55 in row. And that's like 200 plus, 205 to 210, replicated 3 times. We threw out the one replication because it was 60 foot apart, where the 60s actually beat the 30s by quite a bit. But we threw that one out.
Those are the ones I keep. You're being really honest. That's good, Jeff.
Yeah, I tried to keep it to just the side by sides. So
And that's the only population you did?
yes. And it was 2 hybrids, and it's 2 years in a row I noticed this until I started to realize there's something with the structure of this one hybrid that it seems to not matter if it's in 60s or 30s.
Well, Albert Lee is the, I guess, parent company of Viking. So I've talked to them a few times this last couple of weeks, and they seem pretty interested in being part of the plot study. So I asked them to come up with at least 8 different hybrids to try.
Majority of their seed used to be growing right over by Shell Rock, so. Epley Brothers.
Yeah, I heard when we were at that meeting in Lincoln, there was a few guys talking about Viking seed, so on how they actually gave a discount on naked seed. So I figured I'd start with them.
And that was the reason I started with them in the first place, was it was the only place I could find untreated. Since then, my local company is offering it untreated.
Anybody else questions for anybody? This is exactly the kind of conversation that I'm delighted that we're having in this meeting, and I would love for it to be little text messages that pop up in the app. I think that's their theory, is that it almost becomes conversational, with a snapshot and then a quick question, and then 4 or 5 people can jump in with an answer. So good. Zach, any conversations you've had with any of the folks you run with? You know, you've got a lot of followers and a lot of people, big social media presence out there. Are you getting any tickles or interest on the corn variety selection stuff?
No, not specifically on that. Just I think more people wanting to play with it. You know, they DM me questions about my setup, or we'll give a call or something like that. And, yeah, it's been more initial stuff than getting into the specifics. You know, it's well, I don't know. I mean, you know it. I mean, it's Junior knows it. It's just daunting trying to build a plot out and then take the time in the middle of a really busy season. You've got other valuable things to do
Yep.
to be able to put in a way that you know, that you can have meaningful data. I do think, you know, I do think there are seed agronomists out there. I think dealers are probably a poor place to start because most of them don't have any interest in this stuff. But I do think, you know, the agronomy geeks, if you could approach them right, and you know, there might be some ways to talk them in, you know, with, because they all get, you know, distributions of you know, seed to you know, put this plot stuff in. I think if you could find the right people that would be interested and work with them, we might be able to get some more cooperation from folks like that.
Yeah, and I guess confession's good for the soul and the soil, the soul. But Zach, I'm lusting after any of those extra twin row units you've got, probably in a pile. Are you? Tell us just a little bit about the planter you bought and what you're doing with it, and then what you're doing with the leftovers.
I'm gonna put them on public auction, I think, because there are a lot of people. No, so I really lucked out. I had a good buddy of mine down at Ames, a guy named Caleb Aiken, tipped me off to this planter that was over in Dyer. And it was originally a Harry Stein planter. It was originally bought as a twin row planter and then converted into a Stein. And so I was able to get it snagged and brought it home, and we tore all the units off here last month, and then we had to extend the bar out like another for the schematic that I wanted to do. I've had to make some concessions. I haven't, you know, I've already sunk a lot into this thing, and the budget just isn't going to allow to do everything I want to. But I initially wanted to have it so we could slide everything back and forth, and you know, within 5 minutes change the widths of the you know, either singles or twins. But I'm going to have to either next year build a whole new bar to do it or add a bar back to do it. But long story short, the way I'm going to, you know, last year I did the 60s and the 90s. And I think, you know, my goal is I want to really find a way to have meaningful cover growth or, you know, other species plants in between. And it really looked like to me in my observation that with at least the twin row stuff, you know, the sweet spot was somewhere between 60 and 90. And so I'm picking 72s this year, but probably going to do, I've figured out that I'm going to be able to do enough shifting around. I'm going to be able to do some 60s and probably some 90s too. So it's just going to come down to how much I have this spring with trying to get everything else done and what I end up putting in. But it's a fun little toy to have. And, you know, right now as it sits, I think, to answer your question about the twin row units, I think I'm going to have, let's see, what is it? I think it's 3 rows, three twin rows left that I'm not using.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Can I come in here? I think twin rows would be a logical next step. When I released our data, we didn't release any of our single row data because the twin rows just consistently outperformed the single rows. We had trouble in our single rows of knowing exactly how much to increase or to shorten the distance between plants in the row. So with our twin rows, we never had to do anything to population. We just didn't change anything. We just had 2 rows instead of 1. And we like twin rows. I like twin rows very well. And if you look at Bob's data or look at any data compares twins with singles, just review of that you can find it. But on this site that we have here, you just look at Bob's data, the twin rows and twin 90s, twin 60s versus the 30s and the twin 30s, and I think there's no comparison to what the twin rows in his 30, 60, and 90 and rows that he's got on this site outperformed the single rows.
Well, some of them. And Zach, you're exactly right. The 90-inch is a huge thing. I'm enamored with it because it makes a space you can get a small a reasonable older utility tractor up and down, and maybe some little round balers or whatever, you know. So if you're really into grazing, and my time out at Lincoln with the green cover meeting out there, I really the message came home loud and clear. This is a big deal for folks that have cattle, and I don't know that it makes sense for them to look at 90-inch, but if you really value the grazing, it might be, and it might be that what it becomes is 90-inch corn in a grazing pasture rather than grazing pasture in a cornfield. So, and it's just how you perceive the field, but there is definitely a major yield drag at the 90 at least, and I've done some diddling around with a couple of other things because I'd still like to make that happen. And then on the other side of it, with the twin 60s, I got frustrated last year because I couldn't get my little 48-inch wide tractor down between the 60-inch twins very well. So I ended up having some compromises on side dressing and weed control and that sort of stuff. And we haven't talked about weed control today. That would be another meeting in another day, I expect, and that'll be a high energy thing because that's the thing that everybody first worries about. Any other comments on the variety thing? I'm going to show you what I'm wanting to do for a variety plot this year. I'm not suggesting it's the right thing to do or anything like that. Any other questions for Zach or Junior or anybody else on the variety selection question? Okay. I'm gonna take that as no. So I'm gonna jump.
Bob, could I step in real quick?
Yes.
Is anybody playing with open pollinated?
Done quite a bit of it.
Well, I planted some in 30s interseeded covers in that last year, and I'm going to play in that realm a little bit here. But non-GMO and open pollinated is what I didn't know if anybody has played in that arena or not, or if that's even a deeper hole to go into.
It's a deeper hole.
Okay,
Jeff,
well, at least I'll grab the deep scuba gear.
I mean, the biggest thing I would say is it's going to adapt to the situation a lot better than conventional corn, I would say.
Well, my hope is if I can save some of my seed back, and if I can gain some, I don't know, plant adaptiveness, if you will, to what we're doing with the covers. And I'm in Central Illinois, but I'm probably more of a timber soil than a standard Central Illinois soil. So from what I hear, I'm probably one of the southern guys here, but I don't have much in common with my neighbors to the north. So but that's why I'm kind of thinking if I can kind of grow something that's more along my help hit what I'm trying to do on our farm, it might help her. I don't know, maybe not.
Yep.
Okay, Matt. So one thing, we've been growing some Wapsie Valley and some Jimmy Red. I don't know if any you others would have this observation. It seems to me that lower population is almost better. We had a lot of barren ears on high population open pollinated corn this year. Anybody else see anything like that?
I would say the same thing.
So
And at lower population, we seem to have more responsive multi-ears per plant.
So as a lower, what kind of range are you looking at?
Well, we had a field, this was severe dry land. It went 90 bushels an acre at probably 7,000 population because of poor germ. This year we planted some and irrigated at 28, and I think half the stalks were barren. Very hot year. I don't know if that made the difference, but poor yield.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and we're running probably 24 versus 36 normal.
Mhm.
Hey, Bob, on the variety hybrid question, is there a way that you could get seed and actually disperse it? We could do a blind test plot for you.
That's an interesting thought. Yep. I think, yeah, I'll speak to that here in a little bit, but that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I think
It would have to
seed-
be adapted, to our areas, but
Yeah, and I will confess that unlike Leroy, I was very late to the game in worrying about corn variety. I took the approach kind of like Junior did initially. I just go out into these strip intercropping fields, which weren't mine, hand pick some stuff, and I said, "Hey, it don't matter. The corn don't care. You give it sunlight, you're going to get more corn," and that's generally true, but but it's a game of inches when you start getting pretty serious about 60-inch rows. So, but I think I don't think it's a seed availability issue. I think it's the willingness of a grower to do a test in a format that's rigorous enough that the academic and statistician types are comfortable with it. And what I did last year was a train wreck statistically. I had an enormous number of variables, way too many. I've scaled that way back this year, but I have a seed breeder that says, "Yep, that's a good plan." So there's about 5 different things I looked at last year. I'm not going to do this year, but I'm trying to earn some credibility stripes with and the agronomy types, and so I would let's any other comments on that, or would that be the rest of the guys' experience? That if you said, "Hey, I'm going to do 4 replications side by side," do you think your seed company would give you seed, either blind or not blind?
I've got a pretty good contact with my Pioneer sales agronomist, and he said he'd give me enough seed for 20 acres of different hybrids, but it sounds like way too many hybrids. I can't do that.
Yeah, it still has to be manageable.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well, that's something I'd like to maybe discuss either now or at a later time, is what guys would like to see in these plots. Something that we can agree on. If guys agree that 60-inch twins or 90-inch twins are the way to put in the plots, because we already know 60-inch singles aren't going to yield as well, that kind of thing, just to make the plots easier to manage. We don't have to look at so many variables.
Okay, Jason. Yeah, that's a good point. I think that will be a segue to the next conversation here, if I can jump to the right window.